Back that morning, you get up out of bed and you walk out the door and it's hot and muggy, and it had been that way for several days.
I remember the day was pretty warm. It was windy, and it was unusual for an October.
And I remember it was really a hot day, very warm and humid, and we knew storms were forecast for the day.
Well, the National Weather Service earlier in the week has given us some pretty good forecasts, said that the chance of severe storms were pretty significant for our area. So we kind of kept an eye on the weather most of the week. And during the day, you could kind of feel the pressure in the air that it just something was brewing.
The air had a funny feel to it. Sometimes when big storms are about to happen or coming, earlier in the day, it's got that kind of funny feel. Humidity rises. There's an oddness to it, and I felt that day.
Clearly remember the emergency service chiefs had mentioned during the day that these storms were coming, I think, out of Iowa, Illinois, and were headed our way, and they were just pretty certain we were going to have some really bad weather.
You know, if I remember correctly, it must have been around I don't know, early evening. The threat of severe storms, I think, was issued and so forth. And then maybe around, I don't know if it was around 8:30 or 9 o'clock, there was good evidence that there could be some storms, and superintendents got a call to come up to the police station for possible storm duty.
The day progressed, and then into the early evening, watching the radar, the national radar, the Indiana radar, we could see that the storms were coming in, and it looked like it was inevitable that we were going to get something. How severe at that time, we didn't know. So I had already let all my personnel, my full-time people and my volunteers know that there was a good chance that we're going to be going on a weather watch, that we could be experiencing some severe weather this evening.
By the time I got up to our command center, the tornado siren was going off, and in my time as mayor, we had never sounded the sirens for a tornado.
Officer Weldy was out at State Road 19 and County Road 1350, and all of a sudden he's on the radio yelling, "Tornado on the ground, tornado on the ground, State Road 19 and 1350. And it just seemed like time stopped.
Everybody was concerned for their families. And that's why I called my wife right away and said, this is the real thing. We do have a tornado on the ground and it's coming at you. Take cover.
We were sitting there, we were on our cell phones trying to get a hold of our families, and we couldn't get a hold of them. It gets pretty emotional.
I remember I came across the street to meet with the mayor and Kim Engel. We wanted to type up a statement. And when I walked out of the police department, I just remember it was just pitch black.
And it was so black and so eerie. It just wasn't Nappanee. You just felt it. It just wasn't Nappanee.
Everything that you knew as a landmark was gone. Everything was gone. I mean, it was absolutely wiped out. And I remember us driving to get there over poles, over debris. You know, Mayor said, let's keep going, keep going. So we were driving over everything to get out there.
You've got power lines down, you've got people wandering around trying to figure out what happened that lived there.
But the one thing that I will take to my grave is when we got back to my truck and the mayor got up in the back of the truck and he goes, you got a light. And I had a spotlight in my truck and I turned it on for him. When he shone that around towards the Fairmont complex and all the way around the truck, he turned around and he looked at me and I could see his face. The sheer disbelief look he had on his face, and the words was, oh my God, Gail. And I will take that to my grave remembering that.
We jumped in a truck and we started heading that way, and we were going to try to make it so that we could assess the damage closer to our home so we could find out what was going on. We turned down State Road 19 going south, and we got to the edge of town and we couldn't get any further. And we just sort of looked over at each other and we was like, oh my. And I asked him, I said, have you got a hold of your wife yet? And he said, no. And I said, well, we're going to get out there some way or another. We're going to get out there. we looked across, and it was just pitch dark, and we got out with the flashlights, and we looked across, and it was unrecognizable. You just couldn't see, you hardly could tell where you were at. We had flashlights, and we just went across the landscape, and there was nothing there. And at that point, we got back in the truck, and we knew we couldn't get that way, and 6, going to the east, you could look down there, and there were telephone poles across the road. Dairy Queen was gone. He finally got a hold of his wife on the cell phone, and she was okay. I pulled up in the driveway at my house, and my wife told me everything was okay. So she told me that everything was okay. There's just a little bit of damage on the house, but it would be fixable. So.
And then about 5 o'clock in the morning, Mayor Thompson called me and asked me to come up to the city hall, and that we'd been hit with a tornado. And so we went out and toured the damage. I just remember how dark it was. And then we approached 6 and County Road 7 and saw the devastation, and it was just unbelievable. I was just, it's almost surreal. You don't feel like this is really, Nappanee, this is not really happening. I felt, like it was almost a nightmare. And you're like, where do we go from here? What do we do to get this cleaned up?
At daybreak, as I remember, we canvassed everything probably for the 3rd time, and the guys were painting the doors that we had searched this home, so on and so forth. And again, we found very few, if any, injuries.
So we had a lot of support from the county and surrounding communities that sent firemen, EMS personnel, police, and so forth to assist us as we tried to wrap our heads around of what really happened here.
I must say, the first day, the Friday after the tornado on Thursday night, I received the first $10 donation that came into the City of Nappanee citizens. In the end, we received $695,000 to help our citizens.
I think I realized just how close, how strong community Nappanee is. I look at our city family. We're not department heads, we are a family. And through the leadership of Mayor Thompson and now Mayor Jenkins, that is still being carried forward to this day.
I'm not sure I would be mayor today if I didn't see the community come together like that. It just gives you a sense of pride and a sense of hope that, when disaster does strike, there are people out there that set aside all differences and come together for a common good. 10
years later, you hope that our city or any city ever has to go through this again. And with everything that's going on in our country, I guess in the big picture, our tornado really wasn't that bad. We don't want to go through it again. But there's really no signs of the tornado for most people today.